Back in patch 3.25, GGG did a huge balance pass on physical damage taken as modifiers, to make them less accessible across the board. And one of the big changes resulting from this was the Purity Watcher's Eye modifiers that were replaced with new versions. Instead of physical hit damage taken as the respective element, they're now the other two elements taken as that respective element. For example, 10 to 20% of cold and lightning damage taken as fire while affected by Purity of Fire. Notably, these modifiers work for all damage, not just hits. And whilst this change did nerf Fizz taken as setups quite considerably, it also enabled some new defensive setups. For example, in a previous video from the Settlers League, I discussed the combination of Divine Flesh, the Font of Thunder, and the Purity of Lightning Watcher's Eye modifier to take all fire and cold damage as either chaos or lightning. That setup is incredibly strong when paired with Doppelganger Guise or the Fourth Vow. However, in the Secrets of the Atlas, there's a new unique jewel that can rarely be obtained from any of the 3 new Pinnacle bosses, and it's very similar to Watcher's Eye. Bound by Destiny rolls 3 random modifiers, each of which are only enabled if you are equipped with a number of influenced items of a specific type. Now, I'm not going to be covering all of this jewel's modifiers in this video, perhaps I'll make a video in the future for that, but I want to focus in on one modifier in particular that's very strong. And similar to the Watcher's Eye change from last league, this new modifier enables a bunch of strong defensive setups. 5 to 10% of elemental damage taken as chaos damage if 4 hunter items are equipped. Notably, this modifier is not specific to hits. It will work for all elemental damage, including damage over time. Now, just like the Watcher's Eye modifiers, where you must be affected by a specific aura to benefit from that modifier, this modifier also has a trade-off. You must be equipped with 4 hunter-influenced items. This can also include items with multiple influences that are crafted using an Awakener's Orb, and you can also get core drop pool unique items that are influenced. To do that, you need to chance an influenced base, or to guarantee a specific influenced unique, you can use an Omen of Fortune as long as the unique is in the core drop pool, and it's the only unique on that specific base type. There's also several divination cards that reward influenced uniques, but those are obviously from a random pool selection. But let's just take a look at this modifier on its own for a moment. Notice that, unlike Divine Flesh, this does not make any damage bypass Energy Shield, and this means that you can actually use this Bound by Destiny modifier with Chaos Inoculation. That's just 10% of incoming elemental damage being deleted because that portion of damage is taken as chaos, and you're immune to chaos damage. That's incredibly powerful. And if you wanted to, you could combine this with Incandescent Heart to make 35% of the elemental hit damage be taken as chaos damage. That's literally 35% of incoming elemental hit damage being removed from the calculation. It doesn't make it past your mitigation, and only the remaining 65% is mitigated as normal. But what other crazy setups does this new dual modifier enable? Well, there's actually quite a few. Firstly, there's the Divine Flesh and Font of Thunder combo that I already mentioned earlier. Combined with this modifier on a max roll, you'll take 60% of elemental damage as chaos and 40% of cold and fire as lightning, which is considerably better than using the Purity of Lightning Watcher's Eye modifier, because you take more of the damage as chaos and you already have an additional 5% maximum chaos resistance from Divine Flesh. Not to mention that this is also slightly stronger against lightning penetration too, as you'll be able to avoid that penetration on 60% of the damage, whilst avoiding all fire and cold penetration. But because the majority of damage is taken as chaos, you can also focus on scaling maximum chaos resistance and other methods of mitigating chaos damage, such as stacking Born of Chaos Cluster Jewel Notables for max chaos res, or utilising the Doppelganger Guise unique body armor for a large chunk of less chaos and physical damage taken, or the Fourth Vow to apply the armor formula to chaos damage taken from hits. There's also the Soul of Shikari Pantheon upgrade for 5% reduced chaos damage taken. However, do be aware of the chance to be shocked modifier on the Font of Thunder. You will want to solve that with shock avoidance or immunity. But that's just one setup that this new dual modifier enables. There's also the Flawed Refuge, which could be used instead of the Font of Thunder to make 40% of elemental hit damage be taken as physical damage instead. This setup is extremely powerful against elemental penetration. You are simply unaffected by any and all forms of elemental penetration as you no longer take any elemental hit damage. That also means that you avoid the downside on the shield too. But it's important to mention here that unlike Font of Thunder, this modifier only applies to hits. So for that 40% of elemental damage that's not being taken as chaos, you will take that damage normally as elemental damage if it's elemental damage over time. But I still wanted to mention this shield here as I feel you can still make something good out of it, for example using the Juggernaut. Now, this Bound by Destiny modifier is also the missing piece of the puzzle when it comes to reaching 100% damage taken as for other combinations of items. For example, a more budget-friendly version of the classic Sublime Vision setup that takes 100% of cold and lightning damage as fire damage. The problem with that setup is how expensive it is due to the rarity of a Purity of Fire Sublime Vision. But you can now forego the use of Sublime Vision and still reach 100%, only that 10% of that will be taken as chaos damage instead. By using Tempered by War, along with a max roll Dawnbreaker and a max roll Purity of Fire Watcher's Eye, and then a max roll Bound by Destiny, you'll take 90% of cold and lightning damage as fire, and 10% of elemental damage as chaos. In some ways, this is a superior setup to the Sublime Vision version. Not only are you able to use other aura skills because your aura skills are no longer disabled anymore from Sublime Vision, but if you're Chaos Inoculation, you also take 10% less damage by utilising Bound by Destiny instead. And worth mentioning I think is that you can of course replace Tempered by War with Divine Flesh. You can't do Chaos Inoculation with that setup obviously because all damage bypasses Energy Shield, but similarly to the Font of Thunder setup, this combination would take 60% of elemental damage as chaos, and then 40% of cold and lightning as fire, which is stronger against fire penetration specifically compared to the Tempered by War setup, but likely the weaker setup overall. So how do you capitalise on these types of defensive setups? Well, I already discussed the Doppelganger Guise and the Fourth Vow. Those are great choices for Divine Flesh. There's also the Juggernaut's Unbreakable Notable that will apply 15% of your armor to chaos damage taken from hits. That's another great synergy with Divine Flesh. And if you're using Divine Flesh, you could also make use of the 10% less physical damage taken while on maximum energy shield. That's an energy shield mastery, as all of the damage that you take is bypassing your energy shield, so you'll always be on full. Or you could instead put your energy shield to use by using Eldritch Battery if you wanted to. Then for the Font of Thunder or the Fire setup, as you only need to focus on a single elemental resistance, you can fairly easily cap out that resistance at 90% using a Purity Aura and stacking maximum resistance jewels. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to make a video covering this Bound by Destiny modifier because I think it's really good. Even factoring in the need to have 4 Hunter items equipped, it's still really strong and it enables quite a few fun defensive setups. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.